Welcome to your own channel NCERT Teaching. Today I am going to discuss chapter number 5 from class 8 science, which is coal and petroleum. In this chapter we will learn about coal, the story of coal, coke, coal tar and coal gas are some products. Then about petroleum, what do we mean by petroleum, what is the importance of petroleum, and refining of petroleum. Then we will learn about natural gases, and then what is natural gas and what are the uses of natural gas, and then we will learn which natural resources are limited. So before starting this chapter, first we will learn about natural resources. So students, natural resources are the things which we get from nature and are useful for us. So I am very sure that you all are aware about natural resources because we are using them in day-to-day life. Some uses are very direct, we can understand their importance, and some natural resources have indirect values. So even we are not able to imagine how important they are and why they are useful for us. So as you can see in this slide of the presentation, that sunlight, water, forest, ground or soil, wildlife and minerals, and there are many more natural resources, and each natural resources have several uses. Okay, if you talk about forest or wildlife, so there are so many uses that we cannot count those uses, because these creatures or these things are playing very significant roles directly or indirectly in our lives, and we are getting direct benefits from these natural resources. And it will be interesting to know that how important these natural resources are. So you can note down in your notebook also, and first you imagine what benefits you are getting from these natural resources, and imagine how many or as many as you can, then search it in textbooks and in internet, and then match your findings, and you will be surprised to know the new uses of the same things which you imagined. So this is how we research. What do you mean by research? So in higher studies you will learn about research, how scientists research, how they come to know about the things. So first they imagine and they search for available material for anything, then they go for observations and they conclude something. So this is how we learn about things in science. Okay, next thing, types of natural resources. So now we have taken some example of natural resources, and every resource is useful for us, we know, in several ways. So if you want to categorize these natural resources, then two very simple categories we can make: exhaustible and non-exhaustible or inexhaustible. And as you can see in the name also, exhaustible means which can exhaust, which can finish, which is limited, and inexhaustible means which cannot finish. Although in this universe nothing is inexhaustible, everything is going to be exhaust in some way, and if you go more deeper, nothing is finishing, one thing is converting into another thing. But in a very narrow way, we can think that resources which seems to be finished, for example coal, petroleum, these things are limited because the processing of making coal and petroleum is very specific, and it happened in the history or ancient times. So same thing with same circumstances cannot happen again. There is very less probability, so we are not going to have more coal and petroleum if we finish the existing one. That is why these type of resources are called exhaustible. And if we talk about sunlight, air and water, in many ways they are inexhaustible to the extent of our mind. Okay, so you can see some examples here. Inexhaustible resources, sunlight, air and water, easily you can imagine. And exhaustible, forest, wildlife, minerals, coal, petroleum and natural gas. These are limited. In upcoming slides you will come to know that how the petroleum and coal formed. Then it will be easier for you to imagine why they are exhaustible. Okay, then about fossil fuels. Okay, if you are aware of the fossils, very simple definition, let me read this statement. Fossil fuels are fuels formed from the dead remains of the living organisms that lived millions of years ago. Very simple. Remains of ancient organisms are called fossils. Okay, remains of ancient organisms are called fossils. No matter whether they are plants or animals or any other creature. So fuel we are getting from fossils is called fossil fuel. Very simple. I am sure that you have learned something about fossils and mining and rocks in social science. Let me remind you very brief that there are many types of rocks. For example, igneous rocks, okay, sedimentary rocks. There are many types of rocks. So the rocks which have layers are called sedimentary rocks, and in those layers we find some ancient remains of living organisms. Okay, or that time they were living, actually dead organism. So those remains are called fossils. The fuels we get from those fossils are called fossil fuels. One more thing, see, we all know that if we talk about food, food is fuel for our body. So every living creature is dependent on another living creature for their food. Jiva jivasya bhojanam. There is a saying in Sanskrit, and that is very true, because every living creature is dependent on another living creature. Only plants are not dependent on other living creature because they are able to make their own food by the help of sunlight, and this process is called photosynthesis. Otherwise rest of the organisms are dependent on plants or other creatures. Okay, so living creatures are the food of living creatures. Why? Because of a very simple reason. Let me write the thing. Biomolecules. Although this is not a topic of this chapter, but this will deepen your understanding. So we are made up of certain type of molecules which are called biomolecules, and I am sure you are aware about those molecules. The name of those molecules are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. There are some examples. So these biomolecules are actually organic molecules. Okay, the molecules which we find in living organisms are called organic, and I am sure that you have heard this term before. Organic means connected to living or dead things. So actually the things which we are using for fuel, either we are using wood or coal or petrol or diesel or any other thing, kerosene oil or CNG or LPG in any form, actually that comes from living or dead creature, because only these molecules have some capacity to provide energy. That is why when it comes to food we are dependent on the other organisms, and when it comes to fuel we are again dependent on other organisms but in modified form. So fossil fuels are nothing but remains of other organisms which have lived in the ancient past. Okay, so these coal, petroleum and natural gas, majorly they are fossil fuels: coal, petroleum and natural gas. Okay, let's learn more about coal. So what is coal? There are many forms of coal, and one thing is there in a textbook is given which is called story of coal. So what do we understand by story of coal? See how coal was formed. This is what you call a story of coal. Okay, so that process of making coal is called carbonization. Okay, so we can read these 3 lines, very simple to understand. I will read it for you. Coal was formed by the burial of forest under the soil due to earthquake, landslides and flooding. So because of any calamity or natural disaster, if vegetation buried in the soil, and because of that deposition, and then because of pressure and temperature, that converted to coal. So what is written further, as soil deposited over them, and this is how we get sedimentary rocks, okay, layer by layer, they were pushed deeper in the soil and got compressed, okay, and that is why you are not able to imagine that, okay, coal was a living creature before many years ago, okay, actually they are dead plants, remains of dead plants. Then due to high temperature and pressure and absence of air, this is very important, otherwise in presence of air there is a possibility of oxidation, and nothing will remain, okay. When I was talking in my previous videos about microorganisms and metals and other videos, fibers and fabric, so I have discussed many things about organic and inorganic and blue and green dustbins, what is decomposable, not decomposable. That time I was saying that the food remains or the remains of living organisms are biodegradable, but that are biodegradable because of the presence of air. If air is not present, in those conditions, high temperature, high pressure and absence of air, that those type of conditions made those remains as coal. So nowadays it is not possible to create those conditions, that is why coal is considered as limited resource. So in these conditions, dead plants got slowly converted into coal after millions of years, and this process is called carbonization, and this is a slow process, you can notice, and because it is a slow process, we cannot repeat this process, we cannot you can see the conditions, very hard to recreate, and we don't want to recreate, we don't want to invite any disaster. So there is an image of a coal mine in our NCER textbook, I included the same image, but you can see one more clearer image how a coal mine looks like. This is how we extract coal, okay, very simple to understand. So this is about coal. So in brief, we can say that coal is the dead remains of ancient plants. Now let's talk about products of coal. These are the products of coal. This is coal. This is the diagram from NCERT. This is another diagram, again coal tar from NCERT, and then coal gas. So first thing is coke. What do you mean by coke? See, coke is a tough, porous and black substance obtained during the processing of coal. Okay, coke is the purest form of carbon, you can say. Coke means purest form of carbon. It is almost pure form of carbon. It is used in manufacture of steel and extraction of many metals, okay. So this thing we need to memorize. There are some terms in any chapter which we need to memorize. Next thing is coal tar. This is, see, this is coal tar. This is coal tar. So this is black thick liquid, unpleasant, with an unpleasant, of course, if you're talking about petroleum products or coal, all will have unpleasant smell, because you can imagine, because they have gone through an pressure and temperature, absence of air, and they are actually remains of living organisms. It is a mixture of several substances, and it is used in dyes, drugs, explosive, perfumes and plastic and roofing material, okay. There are so many uses of it. Then finally the coal gas. Coal gas is used in fuel industries. It is used for street lighting earlier, okay. These are very simple uses we need to memorize about coal and their products. Next thing is petroleum. Okay, what do you mean by petroleum? Again, see, coal was formed on the land during some natural disasters, burying of plants, vegetation, and petroleum, same process if it happened in sea. So petroleum was formed from organisms living in the sea. As these organisms died, their bodies got settled down in the bottom, then got covered by layers of sand and clay. Roughly it's the same type of process which happened on the land for the coal. Due to again high temperature and pressure and absence of the air, okay, you can see same conditions were there on the land for the formation of coal when vegetation, large number of vegetation buried, from many millions of many thousands of years ago. Okay, so the same conditions are there. Okay, so what are those conditions? Those conditions are high temperature, pressure and absence of air. This thing we need to remember, and slowly got converted into petroleum. This is the petroleum refinery, again given in the NCERT textbook. Again one more clearer image. Okay, then in my next slide, okay, see a very good sketch from our NCERT. This will help you to understand the formation of coal, or how we sorry, not coal, the petroleum, how, where we find the petroleum. So there you can see some layers here, and you can see here is the layer of gas. Okay, different type of layers, you can see gas, oil, water, and this is how we extract to some depth, and this is how a petroleum refinery looks like in actual conditions. So this is about petroleum, and this is about refining of petroleum. So petroleum is a direct okay, so I think you all have heard about petrol, diesel, kerosene, CNG, compressed natural gas. So all these are the product of petroleum. Petroleum is a product which we get in after the extraction from petroleum refinery. Okay, so petroleum is a dark oily liquid with unpleasant smell. Same thing here, mixture of various constituents, and the process of separating various constituents from the petroleum is called refining of petroleum, and it is done in petroleum refinery. Okay, let me show you the constituents. Again very important table from our NCERT here. So these are some products of petroleum. So you can see petroleum is a very economically important product also. So we have LPG, which is liquid petroleum gas, we use in home gas cylinders. If you are aware about Indian and Bharat gas cylinders. Okay, petrol, very familiar. We are running our vehicles with petrol. So major fuel, aviation fuel, solvent for dry cleaning. Then kerosene. In 50 years back or 100 years back, we were more dependent on kerosene. Nowadays we are more dependent on LPG. So I have seen use of kerosene in my home also. I am sure that many your parents have seen use. Many students, okay, they may have seen kerosene for another uses, for cleaning, for some cleaning stuff or some painting stuff. So fuel for stoves, lamps, and for jet aircrafts. Diesel again, there are many cars which runs with diesel. I am sure you have heard about petrol and diesel also. So it is some lower category than petrol. So it is, petrol vehicles are more efficient, and diesel is cheaper but less efficient, and that is why you will see, if you see about the prices of cars or vehicles, the diesel vehicles are costly because they save our money, because diesel is cheaper. But nowadays I am not able to see the huge difference between the prices of diesel and petrol. They are almost of the same price. So it's better if you go for petrol vehicles, if we have to choose. Okay, so petrol for heavy motor vehicles, electrical generators. Lubricating oil, again this oil we get from extraction of petroleum. Lubrication, what do you mean by lubrication? When it comes to machinery, you will learn more in upcoming chapters about friction. So friction is a force which is responsible for wearing and tearing of things on machinery. So lubrication removes or lessens lowers the amount of friction, and hence it helps us to save our machinery. So lubricating oil is used for that. Paraffin wax you know where we use candles, Vaseline, ointments. Bitumen is a type of coal, but it is not very low quality coal. So it we use bitumen in paints and road surfacing. So I am sure that you will be able to understand these uses, and you can always take help from your NCERT text to better understand this table. And this is image, although it is not very clear, but you can see images of some uses. So along with this table, this image will be helpful for you, and this is a flow diagram for processing of these constituents which I have shown you in the table from petroleum. So in different temperatures, in different conditions, we are able to separate these constituents from petroleum, okay, which we extract from this type of refinery. And these are some petroleum deposits in the actual conditions. It is a very small chapter with very less information, but very crucial, very important in our day-to-day life also, and for our examination point of view also. So it will be a short video and less than half an hour. So finally the natural gas again, which is a product of petroleum refinery. So natural gas is if you are aware about CNG, see we use LPG in our home, which is called liquid petroleum gas, and CNG is compressed natural gas. So natural gas is okay. So when it comes to fuel, any type of fuel which burns completely, which produces less garbage or less remains, which produces less pollution, which will be a good fuel. But it all depends on the cost and availability also. So although there may be many types of good fuel, but we are forced to use other fuels because of the availability and the price of that fuel. So CNG is very economical, plus it is easy to transport. It is stored in high pressure, that is why it is called compressed natural gas, and it is used in home, industry, transport vehicles and power generation. Nowadays we are seeing many vehicles running with CNG. These are some examples of vehicles, and this is CNG station, pump station, where we can fill our vehicles with CNG. Okay, one thing I also included in this presentation is the same thing which is there in your NCERT textbook, which is called what you have learned. I love this summary because it's a brief summary of the complete chapter. So you can see these points. So these points summarize the complete chapter. And one more thing I wanted to include, that is why I included these cartoons also, Bojo and Paheli. So they are very familiar cartoon for us. I have seen in class 6 science to 8 science. So there are many questions which writers of NCERT have presented as the conversation between Bojo and Paheli, and very good to see them, and we feel connected with these characters, and there are very good questions which are being asked. That is why I included these things. So because I feel that NCERT text is very much important, no matter we are studying class 6, 7th, 8th or 9th, 10th or 11th, 12th biology. Okay, so please do stick with your NCERT. Take help of any other video, animation or any image or any flowchart, but never forget your NCERT, because there are so many beautiful things in your NCERT which nobody can replace. Okay, that is why I included this slide. You can read if you want to read these points which we have discussed. So this was the video for this chapter number 5, petroleum. In my next video I will try to cover chapter number 6, which is combustion and flame. Thank you so much for your patient listening.